From the world of AV programming and control with James King, I'm Steve Greenblatt, and this is Ask the Programmer. Hey, James, how are you? I'm looking forward to today's episode and glad to be with you.
I'm doing good, Steve. And how are you doing?
Doing pretty well. We are able to welcome back our most popular and most frequented guest here at Ask the Programmer, and we get to you and I get to be the audience a little bit and get to answer some of the questions that are posed by our guest today. And he's none other than Dan Ferrisi, group editor, commercial security with Emerald, and he's in charge of commercial integrator and security, sales, and integration. Welcome back, Dan.
Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you so much, James. I always appreciate the opportunity to see you both, to talk to you both. I'm honored to return once again and really be in the nice position of being able to share questions from our audience, from our readers who may not be able to interact with you every day. And I can kind of be their intermediary, be their voice, and make sure their programming related questions are being answered. It's a treat.
Thanks for being with us. And I'm sure that your title also has expanded because I know you continue to grow and evolve and take on more responsibilities. But we appreciate the time that you spend with us, and we're glad to have you on the show. And if you haven't heard Dan before, he was with us about a dozen times, and most recently in episodes 236 and 237. So check those, and then you could also rewind back to many more. So thank you for being with us again, Dan.
Always happy to be.
So today, Dan's going to ask us some questions and help to moderate the conversation. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks again, Steve. So, as I said just a few moments ago, I'm kind of in the rare position of being able to convey from our CI audience some of the questions they have about programming. And I have one that I think is right up your alley, Steve and James. So, let's take a crack at this one. Will dedicated control systems continue to be an essential part of installed AV systems, or will we find them to be less prevalent as more products have apps and their own control capabilities?
That is a great question. So, Steve, you don't mind if I jump in on this first?
I'd love for you to. Go ahead.
All right. So, to me, to answer that question, I'm going to go back to a ongoing discussion that's always happening in the higher ed community in our tech managers, and that is a question of in-room PC or fully bring your own device. Same thing with kind of like your question there, that question there, Dan. It's like, are you going to have a dedicated control system in the room, or are you going to like utilize apps and stuff? Both have their pros, both have their cons. I think dedicated control system is the proper way of going. And my reasoning is we want a consistent user feel. We want a reliable user feel. We want the same experience. Putting a dedicated system in allows us to verify that experience is going. If we have to rely on software apps, cool. Well, we all know Android and iOS act differently. Apps respond different. Are you using an iPad? Are you using a phone? Are you using the web browser? Are you using Android? They all have a little different feel, and we can't control them. Permissions on those phones, user access. And then the whole great thing is, what if they forget their device? And if you don't have a dedicated system, you can't use the room without your device. So that's where my gut reaction is. You got to have a dedicated thing. Now, with that said, apps are great. People are more comfortable with their own device. I know we talked about this prior, is a lot of people, how many folks are calling, how do I use my phone when they get a new phone from, Verizon, AT&T? They're not. They play with it. They mess around with it because they're comfortable. It's their device. Germs, all that stuff. I'm not even going to jump into that part, but they're comfortable. But you throw a touch panel in front of them, they think it's alien language because it's not theirs. They're not comfortable with it. It could have the identical interface as their phone, and they're gonna not want to touch the touch bar. They're afraid they're gonna break it. And so, like I said, pros and cons to both ways. My gut is dedicated because I want to be able to go in and verify that room is working 100% before anyone goes in that room.
Mm. I think that's a really good point. And also, as you say, kind of the uniformity of experience, if it's all wrapped up in that general control interface. But I think your point is very well taken. All of us are device native, digital native at this point. All of us are so comfortable. But it is very, very valid to say that the fluidity we have with our own tablets and our own phones and all that does not necessarily translate to a touch panel interface or something if you go into a meeting room. What you said, that you're afraid you're going to break it or you're going to mess something up, that's very, very true. You don't have that same fear with your own device, but all of a sudden you're using a shared device or a room device or a corporate device or a classroom device, and you're like, oh, what do I do? I'm not sure. It's like all of a sudden we're all thumbs, and it's kind of counterintuitive because we are so device native these days. I mean, all of us have a device in our hands at all the time. Why would an in-room or a standardized device be a problem?
My reaction, I have thought about this for a long time, and my thought is because you look at our device, if I break my phone, it impacts me.
Mhm.
Also, if I break my phone, I don't have egg on my face. Only I know my phone is broken. Maybe I report, hey, yeah, my phone's broken. If I break the touch panel in the room, that breaks it for others.
Mm.
Or the touch panel is a little like I'm not 100% comfortable, but I can muddle around my phone and make it not look like I'm uncomfortable, but in front of the class or in front of the board, in a board meeting, trying to hit panel buttons and maybe I'm not sure what's going to happen. That puts the eggs on my face. And I think that is why we see that timid of, well, I'm going to use my own device because I don't want egg on my face. And also, if I break it, I don't break it for me.
Right. A little bit of performance anxiety sometimes. You don't want to be the one who's goofing up in the room. Like, I totally get it. Anything you would add, Steve?
Yeah, I was interested to hear how James would take this because I think it's an easy argument for us because of our background to always say that centralized is the way to go because we're programmers. Programmers like to be able to have the ability to perform and not minimize what we do and our livelihood by putting it into different devices or taking away the magic that we used to create, and that's really what it was when I first started doing this. People would be scared to press a button because you're talking about days way before touch panels were mainstream and way
Mhm.
before we had phones in our pockets that had screens on them. They were just buttons. So the things that I thought of, because I think it's an easy argument to say that we want to go the centralized route. And I was thinking about there's a lot of products out there more and more that have control capabilities built in. So when do people use stuff like that? And when is that when what is desirable about it? Because obviously manufacturers are spending the money to put it in, and therefore people must be using it or it must be in demand. So the things that I thought of are situations where you have isolated systems that aren't going to change a lot, that don't require a high level of customization or expertise, and you are going to leverage the UI, the experience that the manufacturer has invested in developing. So there are, Zoom, I think, is a good example where we all are very comfortable with Zoom. Zoom's probably put a lot of time into making their UI and to be something that's user friendly. And I know when I work with on other platforms, I'm not as comfortable and I'm not as happy with it. And then you tend to use the platform that you like more, so you become even more comfortable and more happy with it. Um, some of the things that would limit the success of some of maybe we'll call them the edge control platform systems that are not centralized, would be the availability of or the capabilities of it, the how much is it about configuration, how much logic is involved, and also the drivers that are available to talk to other devices, because somebody that's going to use something like that is not going to be able to decipher an API and know how to control devices. They're going to rely on these are the devices that it supports, and they're going to expect that it's just going to work. Um, so there are benefits to it if you're looking at it from standalone isolated systems that aren't going to change a lot. I think another key element, and I think that James will agree, is the ability to scale and manage these systems, because that seems to come up awful lot. Is that I'm not going to just have this one, I'm going to have several, and I need to be able to know that I can replicate them, and then if when they need to be updated, I don't have to go to every single system and update them. So those are some of the things that come to mind for me. That those are also some of the advantages of the centralized system. Um, and some of the disadvantages of the centralized system is the complexity of it, the time that you have to put into it, the learning curve of them. Not to knock what we do, but there aren't a lot of people that can just sit down at a computer and figure it out and make a system work, within the first day, or possibly even within the first week. So I wanted to make sure that we provided you with as much of a well-rounded argument about this, because I think that we can be biased about it, but there are different things to consider, and I think that there are the very tangible um, qualities that we have to look at.
Yeah.
I think
And
it's really, oh, go ahead.
no, no, you go, Dan.
I was just going to say, I do appreciate the objectivity you brought to it. The fact that you did kind of consider the pros and cons on each side rather than saying, well, clearly this is far better, and then give a straw man presentation of the other. There are arguments on both sides. I think the scalability argument you made is pretty compelling, though. The idea that you don't want to have to kind of reinvent the wheel in every room. You want to be able to kind of multiply these systems and have it apply at scale, right?
Yeah. No,
It,
one thing I would wanted to add is that we didn't really touch on, and that is going like diversity with the app, personal devices, is the security. Like to have a personal device communicate with the AV system, you got to grant them access to it. And then that opens up security concerns and all that stuff where if you have a closed system, even if you do a centralized close, and what I mean, like do a centralized AV control system where you can talk to servers and stuff and not go for personal devices, then you can control that security a little more. We can't control security on personal devices. We can set best practices. We can say, hey, here's the firewall rules and stuff. But if someone goes and takes their phone home and they want to access a non-appropriate site and then get malware on that and then you bring it into your environment and that is going across your network, that's a big concern.
Yeah.
Most schools and stuff, the Wi-Fi is segregated. It doesn't have access to other areas, especially the guest Wi-Fi. So if you open up that their personal devices can connect to the AV system, you're putting a hole into your security.
Mm, that's a great point. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. But we don't need any extra points of vulnerability, do we? I mean, it's dangerous enough, the risk landscape out there, to introduce new points of vulnerability unwittingly to the user. That's could be a recipe for trouble.
one thing, and I agree with all of that, and one thing that I thought of that could be interesting is if there were a device that came out that was more mainstream, that allowed somebody who knew common programming languages to sit down and make it work. And I
Mm,
think that that's where we could potentially see some of this catching on if because it's I wouldn't say we would want to open it up to hobbyists, but we're somebody who knew how to program in a language could pick it up somewhat quickly and write a script, let's say, to make a product do some things that they needed that were custom to a system.
Absolutely.
Well, Dan, thank you for leading this conversation. Is there anything that else that you wanted to share, or any other input from your audience that would be valuable?
Well, I just want to again thank you both for having me on. I really do appreciate having the platform, not really for myself, but really, again, as a conduit for our audience to make sure that their questions can be answered about programming, which is such a central part of AV integration today. You can find me on commercialintegrator.com. If you're in the security space, you can find me on securitysales.com or our parent company, emeraldx.com. And I look forward to seeing you both very soon.
Thanks for being with us, Dan. We will absolutely be having you back. You could listeners can check back probably every other month or so, and you'll get an episode with Dan Ferrisi. So he's pretty much a staple on our show, and we enjoy having him. So thanks, Dan.
And thank you for having me.
James, any final thoughts? Anything you wanted to close on, and how can people get in touch with you and continue some of these conversations?
Again, I want to echo what Steve said. Thank you, Dan. Thank you to the CIA listeners who are bringing these questions to Dan so that Steve and I can, address them and hopefully are answering the concerns that, our listeners and the CI readers have to programming. And Dan has always done a great job of being that conduit of bringing these questions forward so we can get them addressed. Hopefully they're in the way or everyone wants to hear them. And again, if you want to get a hold of me, Google me, you'll find me. I'm out there.
Absolutely. So, one thing to add, and this would be a great place. Also, Dan, we welcome you to join us there. And even if you wanted to lead some of the conversation, we have a group on LinkedIn for Ask the Programmer, and we've been trying to stimulate some polls and some discussions and post these episodes. So, we welcome everyone to join us in the LinkedIn group for Ask the Programmer. For me, you could reach me at Steve Greenblatt on social platforms. LinkedIn is where I spend most of the time that I have to devote to social media these days, and it's a great place to be connecting with the AV community. My company, Control Concepts, is a supporter of this podcast, and they provide some of the building blocks that programmers need to get their projects done. So whether you're integrating with a device or you're looking to add functionality to your system, you could find out more about that at controlconcepts.net. If you are watching this show on YouTube, you could also take us on the go in your favorite podcast player and listen to us. If you're listening, you can watch us and view this at your leisure on YouTube. Either place, please leave us a rating, review, comment. We really like to hear from you, and we would really be honored if you would share your favorite episode and leave some, let other people know that we're out there. So thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Until next time, this has been Ask the Programmer.